Week 9, folks. One more to go, and I will be out of your life forever, I swear. Just kidding. I'm not going anywhere, unfortunately, for you. Anyway, filmmakers rarely will have as great as names as this next guy. It's the German genius Fritz Lang. How great is that? So I've actually already seen about 13 of his films, but he's just made so many. There's plenty that I want to see. I managed to catch 7 these past 7 days, and there's still more I would like to watch. So we're just gonna jump through, all right? We're just gonna rank them right now from least favorite to most favorite, as I always do. So number 7, dog. Number 7 is Western Union from 1941. Okay, so you're fun to hear me say this. I don't know how many times throughout this video, and I'm gonna do it every time because it must be emphasized. So I apologize in advance, though. I am so frustrated that Fritz Lang didn't utilize his German expression days into his later stuff, particularly his noirs, but his westerns as well, this one included. I honestly think he would be a household name to this day if he did. Even the average Joe who knows Hitchcock, Nolan, Spielberg, and Tarantino would know Fritz Lang's name. Anyway, so Western Union is about the apparently true story of an ex-outlaw wanting to restart his life by helping out with the construction of a telegraph line going from Omaha, Nebraska to Salt Lake City, Utah during the Civil War era. Now, I say apparently, and I put true in air quotes because apparently this movie takes a lot of liberties when it comes to the actual events. And I say this all the time, and I will be happy to say it until I die. If if you can't tell the history accurately, it's either not a story worth telling or you're not the one worth telling it. But I will say this is from 1941. I can cut it some slack. As easily they didn't have as easy access as we do now to the truth, to all the details and stuff of whatever given event, person, story. And in its defense, it doesn't have that based on a true story text slide you see in a lot of true story movies. However, I still have a hard time letting it slide here because it keeps the same names and the same locations. I, on a plus side though, I can't honestly say it's not well acted, not well cast, and not well shot because it's all three of those things. It's easy to watch, even though it's got like copious series of events in a cursory 95 minutes. So I'm giving it 2 out of 4 stars. The next one, number 6, is The Woman in the Window from 1944. So for the second time in this video already, I'm gonna say it. The Woman in the Window is one of those noirs I wish Fritz Lang had used more of his German expression experience to craft what could have been any of his noirs really, or even his westerns. Could be crafted with to make a really unique and unforgettable film. Even though this is one of the films credited for coining the term film noir, I gotta say I didn't enjoy it that much. It's not just because of the cinematic tameness, especially considering who's at the helm, but for one other real reason. It opens with a Professor Richard Wanley lecturing. He's professor, like he's lecturing on the differences between a killing and a murder, rightly drawing the distinction that murders for personal gain or someone else's, and killing is the general causing of death, like a car accident, a soldier in war, or in the case of this film, self-defense. So it could be intentional irony or a writing oversight. I guess that's up for debate. But what does this guy do when he kills somebody in self-defense? Well, he acts as if he just committed a murder. What he does is he does his very best and embarrassingly failing foolishly at every possible turn to cover it up, and to erase all traces leading back to him. The bro just lectured on how it's legally and morally justified to kill in self-defense. So I don't understand why he changes his mind about calling the cops. It's self-defense 101. There was even a witness there who saw the whole thing that they could talk to. But I guess I understand that he's probably paranoid about losing his marriage and losing his reputation, considering he's a married man who was at another woman's apartment late at night. But it's never stated, thankfully, if he was there to be unfaithful or out of some idiotic naivete or naivety. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. So it's kind of confusing because he would be lawfully vindicated, so there would be no loss of reputation really. And if his marriage was a real healthy one, wouldn't his wife forgive him if he was there for adultery? Or wouldn't she be understanding if he was there because he was being naive? Can't drag. I told you to... I gotta close the door. I'm gonna start closing the door. However, the film's twist at the end does recontextualize my complaint, yet it doesn't excuse it. Couldn't he have thought of better and more believable cover-up methods? Couldn't he have thought about being more composed throughout the whole ordeal? Wouldn't he have focused on the other more important thing than the cover-up? This would all be fine if it was a comedy, but it's presented as a serious noir. Overall, I would say The Woman in the Window is kind of lame, yet that very ending is kind of sweet. 2 stars out of 4. All right. Number 5 is The Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse from 1960. As substantive as Fritz Lang's previous Dr. Mabuse flicks have been, they increasingly get less impressive on a technical level. They're all well acted and well shot. Fritz always knows when to pull or when to push or when to cut to a close-up. Excuse me. But The Thousand Eyes of Dr. Mabuse seriously lacks momentum and tone. It's ultimately a bit bland cinematically. So for the third time, if only he had used his German expression skills here, it would make total sense considering the very first film of this trilogy, Dr. Mabuse the Gambler, was created during his German expression days. There is, like I said, depth to the material here. How Fritz is able to predict the future with these films is ever so astounding to me. He must have been constantly updating himself on the state of the world, and he's equipped with an acute mind to in his analysis. He has an acute mind for analysis of it. It's remarkable. 1922 silent flick Dr. Mabuse, the Gambler, predicted the collapse of the Weimar Republic. Its 1933 follow-up, The Testament of Dr. Mabuse, predicted the rise of Nazism. And this final in the trilogy, and Fritz Lang's final film period before he died, predicted not only Cold War paranoia, but mass surveillance states no matter the nation. The plot works, and it's an intriguing story. I can't delve into it because I don't want to spoil any of the previous 2 Mabuse films. I just wish I was hooked more with exciting pacing and intriguing resonance. So I'm giving it 2 stars. All right, now we kind of get into the more positive stuff. Number 4 is The Indian Tomb from 1959. I'm going to admit my stupidity on this one. I actually started it not realizing it was a sequel until I was about 15 minutes in. I thought it was just starting in media res, you know? So I just looked it up to make sure, and sure enough, that was not the situation. It's the direct follow-up to The Tiger of Eshnapur. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm not Indian. I'll never will be Indian. So I turned it off and put that one on. But I'm going to keep talking about this one. With this being the case, like the last film, I can't talk about plot because I don't want to spoil the last one. I'm actually curious now to see the American release because that one actually combined the two movies into a single movie. And that kind of makes sense because I thought the second part, the Indian Tomb, really drags itself into a long limbo, stretching the story out way the heck out. I know maybe it could have been trimmed 20 to 30 minutes, but that would only make it 70 to 80 minutes long. So I actually think America had the right idea into fusing them together as a single film. I did notice more goofy issues with this one than I did its predecessor, and it's only really got one memorable scene, and it's not the risque cobra dance, opposed to the last film's two or three really memorable scenes. Uh, but it's just as beautiful to look at. They shot them at the same time with the same stuff. It's shot on 35 millimeter Eastman color with the CinemaScope aspect ratio. You'd seriously think this was like a Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger production, and it's not. And allow me to be hyperbolic and say you can't even tell this was from 1959. It just about looks timeless, especially in those close-ups. There are lush and vivid colors and fantastic framing with its widescreen compositions. It all highlights the exotic and spectacular place that is India. Totally watchable. 3 out of 4 stars. All right, so number 3 is obviously The Tiger of Eshnapur from 1959. These two films, I'm pretty sure, were shot at once and released separately in the same year. So this is part 1 of the 2. I should have watched both of these on the living room big screen TV, but I watched this one on my laptop, and when I saw the visual aesthetic, I was like, dang, I gotta watch the next one on the big screen, so I did. Had I known how good they would look, I would have watched both back to back on that big screen. I didn't. So, I definitely got to give both these films credit for shooting exterior scenes, actually in India. I don't know how rare or common that was in 1959, but give it credit. And its interior scenes were shot on studios in West Germany. And I gotta give mad props to the costume and set designers. They add just as much richness to the visuals as does the cinematography. It also should be noted, even though everyone is in brown face except the German guy and all the ladies, this film is not othering or whatever the nation or its people or over exoticizing it. The film does show some of India's dark side, and it's not shy to point out the cultural differences between India and the West, and it criticizes the West too several times. So, as I've said already, The Tiger of Eshnapur is part 1 of 2, based on the book actually by Fritz Lang's ex-wife, Thea von Harbu, about a German who is invited by Maharaja Chandra to design hospitals and schools in India. While there, he falls in love with a temple dancer, the same woman Chandra happens to fall in love with too. So this, of course, complicates things and shenanigans ensue. It's an interesting plot and has some standout scenes. It's got fun giant puppets of elephants and tigers, and it actually explores some unexpected things. The same thing the sequel would too, of course. So this applies to both. You might be expecting a romantic romp, but we're presented with themes like India's changing identity, seeing as Chandra's staff or whatever kind of turn on him a little bit because he had spent time in Europe. Chandra spent time in Europe and is bringing that influence. And it's also about what it means to be India, and that comes in a way that I can't spoil. It's a plot reveal. So yeah, if any of this sounds fun or interesting to you, the craft or the story or the themes, give both these films a watch. I don't think you would be disappointed. So I'm giving this 3 stars out of 4. Surprise! I'm on the webcam because my DSLR camera decided to hang itself. The battery died. Number 2 is The Testament of Dr. Mabuse from 1933. Again, I'll be honest here, I nodded off quite a bit during the middle portion of this film. But that is no testament to its quality. I saw most of the film. I mean, I just nodded off during the middle. I would say I still saw about 85-90% of this. And what I saw is a really compelling supernatural police procedural preceding Fritz Lang's previous proceeding. Did I say that? Preceding Fritz Lang's
previous Dr. Mabuse film, the silent 1922 Dr. Mabuse, The Gambler. Most would probably say you would have to watch that one before you watch this one, or even the last one, 1960s, The Testament of Dr. Mabuse. But I don't think that's necessarily true. This came out in 1933. Do you really think Fritz expected audiences at that time to have seen his 4.5 hour predecessor 11 years prior? Not bloody likely. What The Testament of Dr. Mabuse does that, or has, that Dr. Mabuse the Gambler doesn't, among so many other things, is its pacing that never lags or drifts. It builds and escalates and intensifies, always propelling the story forward. What remains intact, which had to, is allegory. It's a different allegory, but allegory nonetheless. In this sequel, Mabuse himself is a stand-in for authoritarian rule. His controlling society through disorder by engineering and puppeteering chaos to destroy trusted institutions and inciting fear in order to swoop in and seize power. If that's not the most obvious theme here, then considering where the plot goes, the most obvious theme here is how ideologies will find a life all on their own, even as their creators or founders or leaders pass on. It's pretty telling, I think, that Hitler's Goebbels immediately banned this upon release. That should have been a red flag right from the get-go. So 3 stars. All right, number one is Spies from 1928. I am so happy to say that the one I was looking forward to the most is the one I enjoyed the most this week. Now, when I say, for the 4th and final time, why couldn't Fritz Lang make his later films in similar or the same ways as he made his earlier films, this is one of those early films I'm talking about. Silent Fritz is peak Fritz. There's greater scope, greater visuals, and greater themes. We've had countless sound films since its inception, but at the same time, we did seem to lose a grand sense of we lost a grand and intricate sense of cinematic grammar in sound film's earliest decades, and arguably to this day. Gone or rare were the expressive visual language based on composition, editing, and technique. Sound films, or talkies as they were called at the time, too often relied on dialogue to communicate emotion and ideas and thoughts. In short, they would spell things out rather than trust the mind of audiences. But not only that, on like a superficial level, they just lacked appealing visual artistry. And I'm speaking generally, of course, so relax. This was Lang's penultimate silent film. It stars Rudolph Klein-Roge. I don't know if I'm butchering that. Once again as a criminal mastermind, except this time with a lot less influence, a lot less power, and a lot less supernatural abilities. But he remains a symbolic threat. He plays Hagi, a felonious genius who masquerades as a wealthy bank director as he operates an international spy network to destabilize global diplomacy. And Germany's secret service catches wind of some of the shady stuff going on that points to Hagi. So they deploy a charismatic operative known only as Agent 326 to infiltrate the network and put a stop to whoever Hagi is up to. Shenanigans ensue, right? The film tackles some themes Fritz had bodied before and would again later, being prophetic in the process per usual. This one predicts, as well as others, faceless power systems vying for control of the masses and surveillance states monitoring everyone for the greater good and for their own sake. Fritz asks, is anybody free in the modern world? And Fritz answers his own question, no. And this is 1928. Fritz understood that early how technology can be a double-edged sword, and that pretty much nobody can be trusted, even those we're meant to. What kind of what kind of crazy movies do you think this Fritz would be making if he came about today? I can't even imagine. There are other insightful ideas here, as well as stuff maybe he hadn't explored before or after. I don't know. I haven't seen all his movies, obviously. Given the nature of espionage, with having to have multiple fake identities, the film is ultimately illustrating the internal struggle of individuality in a highly patrolled society and an immeasurably lost world. What are we? Who are we? Agent 326, as a spy, has to take on so many different personas, and with every identity it's assigned its own appearance and backstory and personality, and the bad guys have to do this too. It's hard not to lose track of your true self this way. I think this is why so many celebrities lose their minds or develop phony personalities. And on a semi unrelated note, it kept reminding me of how we act differently around different people. We act differently around authority than we do our family. We act differently around our friends than we do at work. We even act differently around different friends, I think, and we act differently when we're alone than with all these people. Spies is cinematically and narratively compelling as well at its surviving 150-minute cut. The film rarely finds itself stagnant. It moves along relatively nicely with plenty of exciting and eye-popping moments. That opening is something. That ending is something. I should have mentioned, do Agent 326 and Sonya fall in love too easily, too quickly? That's something that usually bothers me. But here I think it actually goes back to the fragmentation of identity. It's the first time they feel something real inside themselves and about someone else, and together they find their true selves, and it's kind of sweet and inexcusable for how quickly, because these are people that are so used to being other people, they don't know who they are. So yeah, definitely easy, 4 out of 4 stars. So there you have it, folks. That is week 9 in the bag. We only got one more week left, and it's a filmmaker I already appreciate, but who still has quite a few films I want to check out, and I'm going to be able to check out some of them, and you're going to have to like and subscribe to find out who that is and what those films are. What is your favorite Fritz Lang flick? Let me know in the comments below, as YouTubers say. Bye!
Why are there so many movies?